Another would be Carlson cod liver oil. It sounds gross, and we say not like your grandma's uh, concoction, but it's pretty good. It has your EPAs, DHAs. Those are just your omega-3s. Those are essential fatty acids. They are essential. You do have to consume them within your diet. We cannot synthesize them from any other fats that we might take in through our diet. So um, it's, we get some of these in grass-fed source beef, some eggs that are pasteurized, not pasteurized, but pasture raised, sourced. We'll get those in the yolks. You can get them also from salmon, of course, is a pretty good source of our omega-3s, those essential fatty acids. Plus, it has some D3, some vitamin D3 is also available in that cod liver oil. It tastes pretty good. It's got kind of this lemony taste. I sometimes just take a teaspoon and put it in my shaker bottle along with my BiPro whey protein on days I train. So I know I'm getting a good amount of my omega-3s right there. Green Vibrance, there's many sources of powdered greens. This is just one that I'm very familiar with and been taking for quite some time. Kathy lives on this stuff in the morning. This is one of the first things she puts in her body every day. There's other sources too, but these are just your fruits and vegetables that if you're not getting adequate amounts and you know you're not getting adequate amounts, this might be an option for you. And then BiPro Whey, it's our whey protein we have at the gym. It's the only protein really we carry. It's isolated whey protein, which just means they cleave off the casein protein and they cleave off the lactose from the protein. So it doesn't necessarily, or I shouldn't say necessarily, for most people, it's not an issue as far as bloat, just not feeling well after taking some whey protein sources. This one does not lend to that. So great, a great whey protein with BiPro. I like to get my BiPro. Kathy does the same. I think some of our coaches do as well. I weigh 180 pounds. That's where I like to stay. I want to get a zero 0.9 to 1 gram of protein for every pound of my current body weight. I like to maintain 180, so it's about 180 grams every day. On the days I train, without question, I get this in because it's simple. I can get, for every scoop of BiPro whey, it's 20 grams of complete protein. I'm going to take 3 scoops, get 60 in. So it's very simple for me to get a third of my protein in that one dose. I just put it maybe 10 ounces of water, 3 scoops, a little bit of ice. Sometimes I put that teaspoon of Carlson cod liver oil in there so I can get my omega-3s. I shake it up real good and I down it 30 seconds. I'm good to go. Big ass salad. Everyone that's been with us for quite a while knows about this one. It's just a big ass salad. And then along with that big ass salad is Matt Slaw. So this is a very easy, and I've heard quite a tasty recipe, Matt Slaw. I know it's tasty, but I've heard from other people too. So I'll go with the majority rules. So you could try this. It's easy. I'm not going to go through the total description of this, but you're getting some very good vegetables in there, and along with some root vegetables, and give it a try. It's a good, even on the side, with a little bit of balsamic vinegar and maybe some olive oil. Very tasty. Frequently asked questions. Coffee. Coffee is perfectly fine. We've always said, coffee is one of those crops that's notoriously it's doused with a good amount of pesticides and herbicides. So you want to do your best to find some organic sourced coffee. 1 to 2 cups a day should be close to max, I would think. We can use to sweeten it stevia, or just drink it black with nothing. Or if you also want to lighten it up, maybe some almond milk, unsweetened, cashew milk, almond milk, coconut milk, all unsweetened. Pasture sourced cow's milk, so you can get half and half, light cream, heavy cream. Those would be great options too. Just a little bit, as long as you don't have a problem with lactose. Those would be certainly okay to use. You get some good fats as well with those sources of dairy. Alcohol, I do like my tequila, but I have to keep it in moderation, of course. So what I've done, and I don't want to give anyone, I'll just give you my ideas. What I do, I always say this: if I have any alcohol, it will be on a Saturday, and I keep it to 1 to 2, and I enjoy mine straight on the rocks. So that just gives you an idea. I would think beer is out, wine's out. So stick to your clear alcohols, but keep it at an absolute minimum, or just be honest and be moderate with it. Not just for losing body fat, changing body composition, all that stuff. It's just that's a health issue more than anything. You can just read about the cocktail parties. Just what do? You don't go to any of these cocktail parties famished and find out that all you have are these terrible hors d'oeuvres or things like that. So slim pickings. You don't want to be in an environment like that. So just make sure you've eaten before, especially if you know that it might be sketchy what they have available for you to eat while you're at this dinner or cocktail party. I already went through the dairy. So this is just an example of a food journal. So you can certainly print these out and just write in what you would have on your breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, of course, your water. If you want to keep data on that stuff, that's perfectly fine. But if you want to do this, just in case we say we do an in-body your first, before this challenge starts, and then we do one, say 3 or 4 weeks in, and we see that the numbers aren't going in the right direction as far as body or your recomposition, looking at lean mass or muscle, and then your body fat percentage, we want those numbers going in the right direction across the board. So if we have some data in front of us that we can certainly look at and give you some guidance either way, that would be a good idea. So that's what these are, just up to week 6. But these, once you have your nutrition down and dialed in, there's no need to take record, to keep data or any of that stuff. And that's the whole goal. It should be like, this is just what I eat on a daily basis, and you know how to eyeball the portions and all that stuff. You don't have to get neurotic about it at all. Takeaways real quick. I'm going to leave you with the most important, I think, especially talking with some of the coaches during this week and just looking at on body composition and how to really adjust things so body composition is always going in the right direction, where you're maintaining a good amount of lean mass, so muscle, and always looking into getting after those fat stores that we all have. And that would be, make sure that you are getting adequate amounts of protein in your diet daily. And if you look at that one macro, we have our proteins, our carbohydrates, and then our fats. The carbohydrates and fats, those are secondary. I always like to look at what is your protein intake, where's your ideal body weight. So if it's 120, you should be taking somewhere between 110, 120 grams on a daily basis. And I say that because all of us are active in the gym. If you're hitting the gym 3 or 4 days a week, that's really important that you are addressing your protein, because we need to feed that muscle to maintain it and to make sure that we have protein synthesis and all that potential to maintain or possibly build some more muscle at hand. And we can only do that if we're taking an adequate amounts of protein. It's absolutely imperative. Studies in the past, when people look at protein intake, recommended protein intake, those are not taken into consideration someone's activity levels, someone going to gyms, someone lifting weights, someone doing high intensity interval training. Those things are not taken into consideration. Once those things are in play, that changes everything as far as what you have to do with your macros. So your protein, to make things simple, what is your ideal body weight? Be realistic about that. Don't go back to high school and say, well, I weighed, whatever you weighed in high school and that's what you want to weigh again. Just let's kind of leave that alone. But what's a realistic, reasonable, ideal body weight? And you want to feed that with For me, for instance, is 180 pounds that I'd like to maintain. So I'll eat about 180 grams of protein on a daily basis. When I look at the fat and the carbohydrates, we do not want to go low carbohydrates unless someone told you that's important. Maybe you're type 2 diabetic and it's better to control your blood sugar when you're on a relatively low carbohydrate intake, but then your fats do have to make up those caloric gaps. So you would have to be taking in a little bit more fat every day. But I like to look at this. Your protein is not going to change. That is a staple. Set it and it's set in place. Make sure you follow that every single day. Your proteins and your fats, if you feel like you're kind of dragging, especially after training or before training or whatever, I would say your carbohydrates, your calories are probably a little bit too low, and maybe your starches are a little bit too low. So your carbohydrates might be a little bit too low. But you could play with that. Some people feel really terrible eating adequate amounts of carbohydrates for what they think would be an adequate amount. Others, when they're eating higher fat source foods, they feel much better than if they up their carbohydrates. That's something for you to play with. I've run into so many people that it can go either way. So keep proteins steady at what you believe is a reasonable, ideal body weight for you. And then you have to play with your starches and your fats. Only thing you have to consider is that your starch and your fat sources are healthful. And we've already given you those lists somewhere in the beginning of this, right? So that's what you want to consider. Just looking at this list, or is it? Did I pass it already? So these are your healthful fats and examples of healthful starches. So and these aren't, of course, there's more. We've listed those as well, but you guys get the idea. And here's a better list. So you want your source of healthful fats, there you go. You want your sources of healthful carbohydrates, there you go. And of course here, vegetables are very low net, so they're not going to really count too much. You eat those things for fiber content. You eat your vegetables for as well mineral and vitamin content as far as your vegetables. They're calorically insignificant. You'd have to eat a massive amount to even break 100 calories. So we're not considering that. And then of course your apples, and I would say have a couple servings every single day of a variety of fruits. And then this stuff just stays the same. Figure out what foods you need to make up your protein, your daily protein intake, and break that. If you're having 3 or 4 meals a day, you just have to break that up into thirds or quarters and make sure you're having that every single day. So if you're a 200-pound guy and you want to maintain 200 pounds, then you would have to have about 200 grams of protein most days. Within that, I'd say 10 gram gap. And so that would be a decent amount of protein, but like I said, if you were to break it down, it would be 2 pounds of fish. So that's a great test. Have 2 pounds of salmon and then talk to me and see what else you're in the mood to eat. That's quite a lot of fish. But you would, within your protein sources here, your fish, turkey, your beef, chicken, all that, your seafood, those you can get all of your protein sources or a lot of your protein intake from those, as well as your eggs, and then looking at your whey protein. So your protein shakes, like I said, I make it so simple most days, 4 days out of the week at least. I make it so very simple that I can get a third of my protein in just from 3 scoops of BiPro whey protein. I'm already a third in, and that's awesome. So you kind of want to look at it that way. So any questions you guys have, certainly we'll answer them for you. My email, if you have a couple questions, or if I don't see you at the gym and you'd like to send me something, I'd love to share information with you. My email is matt@theliftgym.com.